was born in the South Texas town of Alice in 1951. Adrian's family can be traced back to the Spanish land grants in the Rio Grande Valley. His fourth great-grandfather got the first land grant in what is now Jim Wells County, called Los Briseños, east of modern-day Alice, where there is a historical marker that was planted in 2018. While doing the research for the historical marker, Adrian traced his family to 1400 Spain and 1600 Italy. That's pretty cool. All the while, he studied much of the history of South Texas. He spent much of his childhood days living north of Raymondville, where he learned the art of roping from his godfather. After moving back to Alice, Adrian started riding horses for Homero Sandoval, and later he started green horses for him. Homero worked with him on his roping skills and his cowboy horsemanship skills, and he has spent a lot of time. His bio is really long. He spent a lot of time over the years working on various ranches in the South Texas area. During the years that he worked as a cowboy, he spent many nights sitting around the campfires, listening to the old cowboys and the vaqueros tell their stories of old days. He became a storyteller himself. He has performed at the Texas State Fair, the National Cowboy Symposium in Lubbock, the Texas Cowboy Poetry Gathering in Alpine, the All-American Cowboy Get-Together in Bandera, Hispanic Storytelling Festival in Austin, as well as other festivals across Texas, even in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and High Point, North Carolina, and our very own George West Story Fest. At this time, it is my pleasure to bring to you Adrian Lopez.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Mary Margaret for this beautiful sunset. It is a sunset that vaqueros really look forward to after spending all day in the saddle looking at the sunrise in the morning. There's nothing more pretty than a sunset or a sunrise. Back in the 1990s, a very good friend of mine, whom I performed with many times, and knew my background as a vaquero of the brush country, of Jim Wells, Duval, Live Oak, and LaSalle counties, and also my association with many of the vaqueros of the King Ranch and the Kennedy Ranch, gave me this book, A Vaquero of the Brush Country by J. Frank Dobie. This book is written in first person with a setting of South Texas brush country in the early 1870s. And no, I wasn't around at that time. But I did get to listen to many of the stories of the old vaqueros from the Northeast Division of the King Ranch, the Oturia Ranch, the Garcia Ranch, and the Garza Ranch when we lived north of Raymondville. And because of that, I learned the skills of being a vaquero, and that was my big dream, to be a vaquero one day and to follow their footsteps. And the book is written with 21 chapters. The chapter that I'm going to be speaking of is chapter 17, the Brazaderos. But before I go there, there's a couple of chapters that I want to go over so y'all will truly understand what the meaning braceros really means. In chapter 1, Dobie speaks of the vaquero, the making of a vaquero. Now, the vaquero, as Dobie puts it, comes from the word vaca, which is cow. And the vaquero is the man who tends to these cows. Also, he said, they're also called vaqueros. And all the vaqueros that I knew would be insulted if you called them a vaquero, because that is a lazy South Texas draw misinterpretation of what we really are, the vaqueros of South Texas. Now, the making of the vaquero is very special because the vaqueros are very, very special in their ways and what they do and how they conduct themselves. The vaqueros take a lot of pride in who they are. They are excellent horsemen because the horse is the main tool of their trade. They are excellent when working wild cattle in the brush of South Texas, and it's not easy. Let me tell you, I've got a lot of experience in that. And they are also very skilled craftsmen, making headstalls, reins, a lot of different materials that they use. Ropes is one of them. Out of horsehair, and rawhide or treated leather. Now, these vaqueros take a lot of pride in their skills in doing this. Now, it's hard to believe that they could make a 30-foot rope out of horsehair. You start thinking, well, maybe that horse had a lot of hair. It takes a very special skill with a very special tool to make these ropes. And vaqueros take a lot of pride in how they make these ropes. They would twist the hair, and at the same time they're twisting it with a homemade tool that you cannot find at Tractor Supply. And they would twirl this deal, and all the while they're intermingling the hair within the other rope. A lot of the vaqueros that I knew had made these things, and they would work in pairs of 2 or 3, maybe 4 of them making these. Now, in chapter 19, it's the bandana and other belongings that the vaquero used. Dobie starts out that first chapter talking about the lariat. The lariat is a very, very important part of the tools of a cowboy or a vaquero. These vaqueros, man, they take a lot of pride in their ropes. A lot of the ropes were made out of rawhide. There were some that were twisted out of maguey, and there were some that were made out of horsehair. The horsehair were not used on the bulls. Most of the time they would use the rawhide ropes. The bandana, which a vaquero used, had a lot of special meaning. They had a lot of uses. During the summer months, they would get it wet and keep them cool. If it was real dusty, real windy, put it over their face, and it would protect them. If they went out on a date, they would cover their face so the girls wouldn't see them. They would also use to cover the eyes of horses when they started working green horses. That way they could get on the horse and not have to worry about anything happening to them until they pull the rope, the bandana off. You could keep your lunch in it. You could take a bandana, put it over your mouth, and suck water out of the cattle trough. If you weren't lucky enough to get one that had a pump that pumped water, and you could cup your hand and get the water that way. But the bandana, the brush jacket, the chaps were all integral parts of the vaquero. In chapter 15, Dobie speaks of the brush country. Now, the brush country in South Texas, I don't know how many of y'all know about this brush country. It is very wicked. Very, very wicked. Let me tell you. He talks about, let me find that sucker. Here it is. I love this book. It's got a lot of notes in it. It's got a lot of things that I've read. I worked for years as the mogotes of huizaches and mesquites down along the Nueces and San Patricio and Nueces County. These mesquite trees, huizaches, ratamas, are all trees that have a lot of thorns. Then you have a lot of the brush, chaparro prieto, uña de gato, corona del Jesús. It's what they call Jesus' head thorns. Those are very, very wicked thorns. Now, these thorns could rip right through you. And now let's get back to the brazaderos, the chapter that I'm going to speak to you about. The brazaderos come from the word brazada, which is known as the South Texas brush down here. It's so thick that it can rip the hide off you. And when you're going through this brush, a lot of times you're ducking and weaving and dodging and thorning and trying to figure out how to get to where you didn't want to go because you heard a sound somewhere down the road. And there's no road down there, and it's not expressway. One of the things that Dobie talks about in the brazada is how east meets west. And in this situation, the brazada can be intertwined so thick that when you go through it, you're trying to see which way you're going, left, right, center of the horse. And you're not riding up tall like they do in the movies. You're down on this horse's back, and you're dodging and weaving just as he is. When you get through the other side of that brush, it's something else. And I love to see the pictures that they'll show these cowboys riding a galloping horse for hundreds of yards with a big loop. You didn't ride hundreds of yards. You might walk your horse through that brush for about 20 yards thinking, I thought I heard something down there. And your loop is very, very small because you don't want to get it caught on the braça. When you go through this brush, you're listening. And you're trying to hear what's going on just ahead of you. Now, that's what we're going to talk about, the brazaderos and the brazada, the brush country of South Texas, which I know a lot about. The brush country down here in South Texas is so thick that it is bad. It's hard to get through. Now, I want y'all to close your eyes as I take you down this trail. Close your eyes, open your mind, and open your nostril because I want y'all to smell. I want you to hear what I say. But you have to have your eyes closed and let your imagination take in the words that I'm going to tell you. It's early morning before daylight. You can smell the coffee brewing in the blue coffee pots. You go out and check your horses. They're all doing fine. You feed them. You get them ready for the day's work. And all of a sudden, before daylight, you eat your breakfast. Daylight comes real early in the morning. You're out riding. During the summer, you take 3 or 4 brush jackets and you put them in the water trough to keep you cool during the day. You put one on when you ride out. You wear thick cotton khaki shirts. Now, you go out early in the morning, early in the spring. You can smell the wildflowers all around you. You listen, it's before daylight, and you hear something out in front of you. Stop! Something broke the brush. You're not too sure what it was. It could be a wild animal, it could be a wild cow, it could be a wild bull. But you go to where you heard that sound. As you're riding along, you're dodging and weaving and ducking and going under and trying to get around. You got a small loop, and you said, I'm going to get this sucker as soon as he breaks a clearing. And that clearing might be about 30, 40 yards down the road, and it's about as big as that table that you're sitting at right now. That is what's growing up in the brazada. Now, this country is something else. As you ride through this, you hear a lot of different sounds. Snapping, crackling, and a lot of rushing through the brush. And I'll tell you what, when you hear that sound of brush breaking, you know that there's something making that sound. Very carefully you ride out. You get to where you're going. You look over. There's one of those mossy cows that you're trying to catch. Now to get a rope on it, that's something else. Now, Dobie talks about these vaqueros off the brazada. In his book, unless you've lived that brush country, it's hard to really imagine what it's like to bust that brush. There's a lot of chapters in this book that you could read it from one point to the other, from start to finish, but that does not give you the point to where you need to be. Now, the brazaderos, they're special cowboys that work this brush of the brazada. The brazada is what it's called, this brush of South Texas. The brazadores are very, very special people. They take a lot of pride in what they do because not anybody can be a brazadero. Now, these brazaderos, they're things of the past. Nowadays, cowboys, they ride trucks. These same vaqueros are no longer brazaderos. They're not even real true vaqueros like I was. They drive trucks. Most of the land has been cleared. Only some of the scrub brush in South Texas is still there. While, all in all, their mind is still the same. I know that I'm one of the last of the dying breed because I knew and I rode with a lot of the old vaqueros of the old days. And a lot of the old vaqueros that I knew are long gone. And I want to thank everybody that's here tonight, especially those that are associated with this event. One of my good friends we called ourselves the Brazaderos. There was a group of us that were cowboy poets, storytellers, musicians, and singers, along with chuck wagon cooks, performed at some of the events, cowboy gatherings in Kingsville, Texas. We were a special group, and they were always calling to get one of us or all of us at a cowboy gathering or a social event of some kind. And we needed a name to call ourselves. Johnny Campbell, Mary Margaret's father-in-law, a very close friend that I'd known for many, many, many years. And I came up with the Brazaderos because that's what we were. We were the brush cowboys of South Texas. So we gave this name to ourselves to pay tribute to the old vaqueros, the old Brazaderos that rode this brush way before we were even kids. And they're very special people that live very, very strong in my heart and in my mind. And to them, I bless all of them. Thank you very much.
As most of us know, there was a vaquero on J. Frank Dobie's uncle's ranch, Los Alamos, and this gentleman's name was Santos Cortez.
Yes.
And J. Frank Dobie said Santos Cortez changed his life.
That's very true.
So my question to you is, what particular storyteller or storytellers made you decide that you wanted to be a tale teller, a storyteller?
But back when I was in high school, I graduated when I was 17, and the drama teacher and speech teacher was a very good friend of our family. And she told me that I took speech because I had a problem speaking. I could not get in front of a crowd like this, and I started stuttering real bad. I'd made Milton sound like a connoisseur of words. And she's the one that told me that I needed to read J. Frank Dobie's books. And Dobie's books, I got to read a little bit of one of them that she had, but Dobie wrote about this man, and it was a big influence on him. When I got older, I was asked to help start the South Texas Ranching Heritage Association. And I was sitting at the table, on the founding table, and because I knew a lot of the old vaqueros, I knew a lot of the King Ranch Cowboys, the Kennedy Ranch Cowboys, the vaqueros of the brush country, Jim Wells, Duval, LaSalle, and Live Oak counties. We were sitting there, and there was a man sitting across the table from me, and he kept looking at me, and I kept looking at him. I'd met a lot of vaqueros in my day, but when we got to looking at each other, then all of a sudden it clicked. It's like, I know you. And I remember him back from the tick quarantine days. If you pulled short straw, you had to work the dipping vat on the corner at 281, the old 281 before, and 624. Or if you really pulled a short straw, you had to go to Three Rivers Sale Barn. And that's where I saw Johnny Campbell for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Now we are doing the storytelling at the first the Ranching Heritage Association Festival in Kingsville, Texas. And I was sitting in the back behind the stage, and there were a bunch of old vaqueros that I knew, and we were talking back there, and there were some people back there. There were more people listening to us talk about cowboys, vaqueros, than there were really paying attention to the ones in front of them. The following year, I was there with my horse because they wanted me to be there with my horse, Old Smoky, and they told me I was going to have to be MC. And being the dumbass that I was, pardon my French, ladies, I said, only if I can do it off my horse. I don't know how many of y'all know of Mesquite Grove in Kingsville, Texas A&I. But it's a cement stage amongst a bunch of mesquite trees that was way out almost in the pasture. And they said, yes, you can do it off your horse. So open mouth, insert boot with spurs and cow manure and all the other fine things. And that's the way it started. And I jumped up on the stage. I rode Smokey up there, and I'm looking around. And I said, well, I'm comfortable on my horse, but they wanted me to be on the stage. So off my horse, I jumped up and landed on the stage. Don't ask me how I did it without tripping all over the mics and everything. And that's how I got my start at being a storyteller. And I got to perform with Mary Margaret. I knew Johnny Campbell, and we performed together many, many times. And it just kind of grew from there. Johnny invited me to come up for the George West Story Fest. And I agreed, thinking, well, and the Chamber of Commerce, the King Ranch, and some of the people from Kingsville wanted me to talk a little bit about the event down there. And I said, I'm not going to do that. Well, it rained cats and dogs that day, so they moved the event to the fairgrounds. And while I'm there, one of the MCs didn't show up. And they asked me, can you do the MC? And I said, I wasn't supposed to do anything. I was just supposed to stand here and look like an idiot in my cowboy outfit. And they said, no, we need you to be the MC. And Johnny come up and said, Adrian, you need to do it. And that kind of put me in front of a lot of people that I didn't know, but I got to meet some of the entertainers back there, and I introduced them. That's how I got started. And little by little, my name got drug out there by some of the things that I did. And my association with Johnny and some of the other vaquero storytellers, that's how they got me into storytelling and poetry. I had some very good friends that I performed with. I don't know how many of y'all heard of Waddy Mitchell. Waddy Mitchell is one of the premier cowboy poets, storytellers. I performed with Waddy Mitchell at the National Cowboy Symposium in Lubbock many, many times. I did the Texas State Fair 3 years in a row. And the third year, I told him, I said, no mas. I hate big towns. I don't like them. I don't feel comfortable in them. But I've done a lot of things in my lifetime as a cowboy poet, storyteller. I met a lot of great people. I met Richard Farnsworth, Wilfred Brimley. The double for John Wayne, I met Pilar Wayne, and Pilar told me that I reminded her a lot of John Wayne because when I walked into a room, people took notice of me. And I started thinking, well, maybe at 5 foot 13 inches and weighing about 200 pounds, I kind of make the door look kind of small. And we joked about that, and she said, no, you've got a presence about you that makes people want to listen to your stories. And some of my stories have come out. One of the couple of the cowboy writers, Max 7, was one of them that liked to listen to my stories because it would give them an inspiration. And a lot of the stories that I told were told about the vaqueros that I grew up with. Somehow some of them came out to be poetry. I posted a few of my stories on Facebook promoting Dobie Dichos.
Yes, he did, and we appreciate that.
And I wish I could have got more people involved in it, but
you tried hard, and we appreciate your help.
I mean, it was. I owe Mary Margaret a lot. I thought it was very funny because I'm a member of the Knights of Columbus, and I'm a district deputy for the Knights of Columbus State Council. And one of my councils is the George West Council at St. George Catholic Church. And that's where Mary Margaret saw me.
Recently.
Well, before that. And she would see me going in, but then she wouldn't see me afterward. So one day she got to Mass super early. I think she was at a campground out there and caught me as I was going in, and she asked me to come do Dobie Dichos for y'all.
And we appreciate your coming very much, Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you very much.